Well, everybody, it is the last Sunday of 2020. And I thought since this is the last sermon of the year, I should do something kind of like a year in review. And the title of the sermon today is Lessons from 2020. And I learned a lot in 2020, but I think the central essence and the central theme of what God was teaching me was about endurance and the ability to keep on going even in the midst of difficulty, even in the midst of hard times, because of the strength that God gives us. And I chose Romans 12:12 as the verse today, which says, "Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer." And I think sometimes we can be patient in affliction because we are faithful in prayer and because we have hope and we're joyful in hope. But I want to share with you a few things I learned this year. And the first thing I learned this year, right as the pandemic was starting, came from an article that Tim Keller wrote. And what I learned was that we need to put our mask on first. If you have ever flown on an airplane before, you know that the flight attendants come out and they're required to do this safety briefing before each flight. And they're walking you through those safety procedures. And at some point they say, hey, if the cabin loses pressure, these masks are going to fall from the ceiling and you're going to put them on, and they have the masks up there, and it's got the orange circular cone mask part and the clear hose attached to it. And then they show you how to put the mask over your head. And as they do, they say these words. They say, if the mask comes down, put your mask on first before trying to help anybody else. And the reason for that is, of course, if you don't get your mask on, instead of being able to help someone else, you're going to pass out and need help yourself. And so one of the things that God taught me was put your mask on first. And like when the pressure goes out of the cabin, you need to instantly make that vital connection with some oxygen, with your oxygen source. In a time of crisis, we need to immediately make the vital connection with God. And we need to connect to Him and have Him breathe into us strength. And have Him breathe into us hope. And have Him breathe into us direction. And to fill us with the Holy Spirit. And so that was the first thing I learned this year, was put your mask on. One of the best examples of this comes from the Old Testament in 2 Chronicles and through the story of King Jehoshaphat. And in this story, Jehoshaphat is king in Judah, and he learns that these other nations have all grouped together, and they are going to attack Judah. And these are, I think, 3 different nations. And they formed a huge army. And when he heard how big it was, he knew that, hey, I can't face this foe alone. I can't do this. And so what he does is he gathers the nation together, and he has them fast and seek the Lord. And they come to the temple, and they pray. And Jehoshaphat says, God, you said if your people are ever in trouble, come to this temple and pray, and I will help them. We're here, and we pray. We need your help. And then he says these words, which became a mantra for me this year. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. He didn't know how to handle the situation. He didn't know what to do next, but he went to God and said, hey, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. We're looking to you for help. So he establishes that vital connection with God in the midst of this crisis. And what happens is God gives him advice. He says, go up, take your positions, stand firm. You're not going to have to fight this battle. And God sets ambushes and actually turns the armies that were invading against each other so that they fought each other and not the people who Jehoshaphat was in charge of. And so God saved Jehoshaphat, and he saved Judah from this attack. Now, we don't all have a whole nation of people maybe who are going to gather together and pray for us, but each of us does have the opportunity to go to God in private in the morning and seek the help of heaven when we don't know what to do, and we can pray and establish that connection with God. Even Jesus did this. In the midst of his ministry, when things were crazy, people were coming to him nonstop, they were seeking him, what he did is he got away by himself, got away from all the people, and sought a connection with God. In Mark chapter 1, it says this. This is after he'd been healing people all night. It says, "Very early in the morning, when it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him. When they found him, they exclaimed, 'Everyone is looking for you.' Jesus replied, 'Let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there. That is why I have come.'" So Jesus has this ministry going, all these people are looking for him, and he goes off by himself to a solitary place and prays. And then when they find him, he's like, "We got to get out of here. We got to do our next thing because that's what I've been called to do." So, lesson number 1, put your mask on first. Establish the vital connection with God so that you can keep going and that you don't lose your own ability to help others because you need help. The second lesson I learned is that we need radical refocus. When we focus on something, we make it the center of our attention. We give it, all of our energy, all of our mental ability. And what we focus on has a big impact on how we go through our days and how we go through our life. And this was really illustrated to me this year through yoga. I started doing some yoga classes. And what is interesting in yoga is sometimes the instructor gives you these maneuvers to do that include several steps. And so you're like holding your arm out here, kicking your leg up in it, bending forward. And step by step, they get you in these positions to where you're like on one leg in the shape of a letter T. And it's very difficult to balance when it's like that. And so what an instructor will often say to the class is, all right, get in this position, and then if you're having trouble, if you're wobbling, if you feel like you're going to lose your balance, find your drishti. And what a drishti is some place in the room that is a firm, fixed, and unmoving spot for you to look at. And the reason they tell you to find your drishti is because if you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you see yourself wobbling around and maybe going to fall, it's pretty likely that you're going to go ahead and fall over. Or if you're looking at someone else in the class and you see them start to wobble and start to fall, it's pretty likely that you're going to fall over. But if you have your eyes fixed on something that is unmoving and it's stable, it helps you to maintain your balance. It helps you to stay up. And I took that lesson for a lot of things this year. For a Christian, our drishti needs to be the Lord. He is our fixed and unmoving spot that we can look to when other things around us are wobbling and moving around. And a verse that went with this that ended up being our theme for the summer for the youth group is Psalm 16:8. It says this, "I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With him at my right hand, I will never be shaken." So I keep my eyes always on the Lord. He's my focus spot, my focus spot. With him at my right hand, I will never be shaken. And shaken in this case is a word that means like you get knocked off course, or you start to wobble, or you grow faint. You're moved away from your purpose. You're moved away from where you're supposed to be. If we keep our eyes on the Lord, it helps keep us from being shaken, keeps us from being knocked off course. And the word in the Bible that's maybe the opposite of shaken is steadfast. It means you're firm in purpose. You are doing what you're called to do. You are not moved. You are not knocked off course. So when we keep our eyes on the Lord, he's our focal point. It helps us to stay steadfast and not be shaken. When I think about this in terms of the Bible, I think about the story of Peter. When he is on the boat and Jesus comes out walking on the water, and Peter looks and says, "It's the Lord," and Jesus tells him to come out on the water. And at first, Peter is walking on the water, But then he stops looking at Jesus, and he starts looking at the waves and the wind and the storm that's going on, and he instantly starts to sink. And fortunately, for Peter, he thought then, oh, I should cry out to Jesus. He looks back to Jesus and says, Lord, save me. And Jesus comes and pulls him back up and says, why did you doubt? I think that's a beautiful picture of us focusing on the Lord, of us keeping our eyes always on the Lord. And if we start to look other places and get off track, we refocus and we come back to God. And a lot of things wobble, a lot of things shake, but the Lord does not wobble, and the Lord does not shake, and the Lord is not moved. And when we keep our eyes on him, he puts some of that steadfastness in us. He helps us to be at peace. He helps us to keep going and not be shaken. So, second lesson I learned this year was to refocus. Keep my eyes on the Lord. Make him my drishti. The third thing I learned this year is to do the next set with good form. God taught me some lessons in the yoga studio, but then when the gyms got shut down and my front porch became my gym, he started teaching me lessons from the front porch. And I don't know if any of you guys, when the gyms got shut down, looked on YouTube to find some personal training videos, but I did. And it turns out that these personal trainers can find ways to torture you through exercise with only a minimal amount of equipment that you need at home. And one of the exercises I learned about was called a man maker. And it's kind of a full body exercise. And what you do is you have a couple just dumbbells in your hands, and you stand up and then you drop down to a squat position. I'm not going to do it right now because then I'll be out of breath for the rest of the sermon. But you drop down to a squat position, put the dumbbells on the ground, shoot your feet back to a plank position, hold it, then raise one arm off the ground holding the dumbbell, put it back down, raise the other arm off the ground holding the dumbbell, put it back down, then do a push-up on top of the dumbbells, then jump back to a squat position, then raise up out of the squat, take the dumbbells and raise them above your head. So it gets like everything in your body. And when you're doing this exercise, or at least when I'm doing it, I found myself, I could do 5 at a time. And if I started doing more than 5 at a time, I would lose my form and I would also just be exhausted and not want to continue. And God taught me through that, and it became kind of a mantra for me to say, all right, just do 5 more with good form. Because if I tried to do more, I wore myself out, or I would lose form. And what instructors will tell you is, hey, 2 things can happen if you lose form. One is your muscles won't get as good of a workout because you're cheating, you're not doing the exercise as you should. Or 2, you can hurt yourself because you aren't holding your body in the way you should, and you can pull a muscle or hurt your back. So the reason that doing the next 5 with good form is helpful to me, not only when I'm doing a workout on my front porch, but also in life, is because if I try to think too many steps ahead, it's overwhelming, and I feel like I can't do it, and I don't have the strength to do all these things, or I just don't know what to do. I look out into the future, and I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm worried about it. But if I break it down to, I'm going to do this next one, this next set with good form, I don't always know 2 or 3 steps away what I'm supposed to be doing, but I usually know what I'm supposed to be doing right now, what I'm supposed to do next. And to do it with good form means that I'm going to bring my own, my best energy and my best attitude to this task right now. When this conversation comes, I'm going to do it with good form. When I'm doing this task at church, I'm going to do it with good form. And when I focus on just one step and doing it well, that is much easier than thinking about, all right, I've got 20 more of these to go, or this is what I have coming up next week to worry about. And Jesus gives us that same advice in Matthew chapter 6, when he's talking about trusting God, that God's going to provide for us, that God cares about us. He ends this little sermon he's doing, and he says, "Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has trouble enough of its own." So for me, taking it one day at a time, letting tomorrow worry about itself, I sum that up in the mantra, do the next 5 with good form. And that has been incredibly helpful in learning to endure. A 4th lesson from this year I learned during the summer And I guess I could sum the lesson up by saying the lesson was to enjoy the given good. When we think about our expectations, there is the anticipated good, and then there's the given good. And the anticipated good is a list of things that we thought would happen, that would be enjoyable, that would be fun for us, that would be good for us. And then the given good is what actually happens. Our plans didn't work out like we wanted, but other good things happened instead. And what I learned and what I thought about a lot was if we go on insisting on the anticipated good, what we thought would happen, we can actually spoil and miss out on the given good, what actually happened. I think about that with the Hebrews as they were traveling in the desert with Moses. And God gave them manna to eat, and eventually they just got tired of it, and they stopped appreciating it, and they started demanding different things, and they angered God by just saying, we don't trust you. We want more than you are giving us. When really the attitude we're supposed to have is, all right, I did anticipate this good thing happening, but instead God gave this thing. And I'm going to enjoy it and take advantage of it for all that I can. There's a proverb that says, Proverbs 14:30 says, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. So when we're at peace, when we say, all right, God is going to bring me the things I need, God is going to give me good things, it gives life to the body. But envy rots the bones. When we say, no, I need this very thing that I expected, or else all is ruined, then we can miss out on a lot of what God is trying to give us. This year, I know my summer got changed. We were supposed to go to a mission trip. We were supposed to go to camp. We do a lot of programs during the summer, and they all got canceled. And that was my anticipated good, the things that I thought would happen, that I was looking forward to. But you know what? God gave other good things instead. We couldn't gather as a big group, so I got more small time with smaller groups of students. And we couldn't do a giant trip anywhere, but we went out on the boat a lot of times. And so it's important, especially in this year, to accept the given good and not be so invested in the anticipated good that we spoil it. The last thing that I want to share with you that I learned this year is that when a crisis hits, or just when you're in a hard time, you need to keep drinking. And let me tell you what I mean. There's a pastor named Ben Stewart who shared a story about his sister and he running a marathon. And they trained for it and they got ready for it. And as it was coming up, the guy who was training them told Ben, hey, I've got like a tip for you while you're running this race. And that is to take these small straws with you and just tuck them in your belt. So when you go by a water station, you can just pick up a cup of water, keep running, slip the straw in there, and sip it as you run so you don't have to stop to drink the water and break your stride and lose your rhythm. You take the water with you and you can drink it through a straw and it won't slosh all over and you won't spill it. And so Ben was doing this run, it was going great, and he got to about mile 20 and he accidentally dropped his straws. He lost them all. And he thought to himself, well, I only have, 6 miles left. I think I can just do it. I think I can go the rest of the way. And he made it another mile and then another mile. And then his sister, who was running with him, started to get the runner's high, and she kept drinking as they went along. And she's like, I feel like I can feel the love of God more now than I ever have before. And Ben, on the other hand, had gotten dehydrated, and he's like, I don't feel God at all. And he actually just had to collapse right there before the finish. And fortunately, he was able to get back up, hydrate again, and go and finish the race. But I think it's a beautiful analogy. When you think you're almost done and you can just make it the rest of the way without drinking anymore, you're probably wrong. We always need to spiritually be drinking from God, be taking in his spirit, be spending time with him. I know when this first started, we thought, we're going to be locked down for a couple weeks. Things are going to be weird for maybe a month or two. And it's just stretched on and on. And so when it comes to the Christian life, the Christian marathon, we need to keep drinking even when we think we are about to get out of a tough season. We need to hydrate with God's Spirit, with God's presence. And Jesus said this in John 15. when he was talking about vines and branches and him being the source that we need. He said, "Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." So here he says, look, you've got to maintain connection to me. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So these are a few lessons that I wanted you to think about that were really helpful to me to carry around as mantras and little things I could say, and I hope they're helpful to you in endurance, and that is that you need to put your mask on first. Remember to refocus. Make God your drishti. Make God your point of focus, because when our eyes are on him, we will not be shaken. Do the next set with good form. One thing at a time, one day at a time, one set with good form. The next steps, you'll know them when they come, but just do the step you need to know now. Enjoy the given good. I know it's tough to lose the anticipated good, but don't let it spoil the good that God has put in your life. And finally, keep drinking. Attach yourself to the vine of Jesus. Keep hydrating. We need it to keep going. God bless.